Good morning, welcome back to Fujitsu Forum TV, where you join us amid a hive of activity. The doors are open. Guests from a staggering 80 countries have descended on Fujitsu Forum 2019, and they're all rushing into the digital transformation zone to see all the latest innovation and hear all the latest thoughts from Fujitsu, addressing those key challenges facing business and society. We've promised you on Fujitsu Forum TV an insight-led approach, looking at your very business and the sectors within it. How do you use AI? Should you be looking at a new multi-cloud strategy? Does Digital Enabler, the quantum-inspired Digital Enabler, have a role to play within your industry? What about automation? And do we need to automate some jobs, but not at the sacrifice of losing jobs? How do we release talent? These are all sorts of questions we're hoping to get you insight on today. Up next, we're talking transport, a sector amid really complex ecosystems right now. What do you need to do with your technology? How do you need to simplify it? How do you address the customer journey whilst making sure you're balancing off those investments on your P&L? Well, hopefully to answer on all of those questions and share some insight around the troubles you're facing right now. I'm delighted to say we're joined by the Transport CTO here at Fujitsu, Rabih Arzuoni. Thank you so much for swinging by and having a chat with us.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
I feel for transport right at the minute. We were talking off camera, and I'm going to start with the conversation we had off camera, where you were saying these ecosystems so complex, partly because maybe some technology is a bit behind the curve, and then we've had this big explosion of technology. I mean, that's got to be a headache for businesses right now.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, a lot of the time, looking at it from the customer point of view, it's a very, very complex and a confusing landscape. Everybody's talking about AI, everybody's talking about blockchain, everybody's talking about automation. But the key is trying to make sense out of all of this and making sure, look at what's really tangible and what's really good, and differentiate what's noise and what's not. I think the transport sector in itself is a really exciting time for the transport sector at the moment. It's kind of, for a while, it's kind of set back and looked at what the other sectors are doing, so it fell behind for a bit. But as a result of that, I think it's going to be really very exciting few years moving into the digital space, and because a lot of the use cases are now starting to appear. But the complexity of the landscape, with a lot of innovators, a lot of SMEs, a lot of startups coming in with a really innovative idea, the challenge for all of our customers is how do you navigate through all of that? And we in Fujitsu play a big part in that, just to help navigate through the challenges and try to make sense of it all. But not just bringing Fujitsu's capability and trying to articulate how does that work. It's the wider ecosystem with partners and suppliers within the transport sector. So I do definitely feel sorry for our customers, and sometimes it's really overwhelming to get over that.
We had Paul Patterson and Rupert Lehner swing by and talk to us yesterday, and they were echoing just that half the battle is, what do we do with all this information and technology? Do you think the transport sector knows what good looks like, or are they still in that discovery phase, do we think?
I think talking to a lot of our customers and within the industry, they've got an idea what good looks like. They're very, very informed. What's missing and what's still shaping at the moment is really the execution side. There's a lot of talk about what autonomous vehicles would look like, for example, in the future, but there has not been a great steps around executing the plan to get us there. So navigating that is still a challenge. So the target, we kind of know what we want, and the customer knows what that looks like, but how to get there is still debatable, so it's still in the making. And depends who you talk to within the sector, they've got a different view about how to get there. And I think we're getting to a position where we're kind of started to really talk about how we start to execute quicker within that story. So, and again, it's got its own challenges throughout the execution plan, but that's the exciting bit. That's what really makes it exciting comparing to other sectors like finance and retail, who've probably already made that leap. So we're kind of really excited about the next few years coming ahead.
I guess we're amidst an age where innovation is key within technology. I'm sure there are many new entrants flooding the transport market, which I imagine presents its own challenge.
Yeah.
Particularly when, I mean, let's be fair, transport companies, they've probably got to focus on what safety and reliability. How do they balance up all of that decision making? I mean, that's got to be a challenge.
So I think for a lot of for Fujitsu is really we play a big part in that balance, and historically, across the sector, and particularly like for example in rail, so aviation as a market within the sector has probably been slightly more advanced than rail, for example. But because it's been focused on a lot of legacy infrastructure, so they're really nervous about making that change or adopting some of the emerging technology. To your point, is ensuring that safety is still key, and also making sure that they're satisfying the customer and delivering the service. So really it's about executing or adopting the emerging technology in small chunks rather than a bigger piece. And this way you're not disrupting the service that is already provided, and also you're not taking huge risks by, like for example, compromising safety as a result of introducing an emerging technology. So the way we talk about it is let's do it in small chunks rather than a big transformation.
Makes sense. Yesterday, throughout Media Day, we were hearing a lot about AI, blockchain, those emerging technologies. In fact, we were hearing a bit about how they're impacting manufacturing, which I know has a bit of an alliance to the transport sector. How do we think these technologies are going to truly impact transport over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about Industry 4.0 now, which is very, very heavy on data. Manufacturers and distributors are going to be really flooded with a lot of data. The key there is to make sure that you use that data and get an insight of and information around some of those assets within the transport ecosystem out there in the world. And I think the way it works is, if we were to couple that with a really strong ERP solution, for example, using AI, we can look, as an example, we can look at the assets all the time. So we're always really analyzing the assets. And we can look at it from a condition base and then really predict where something's about to go wrong or really needs to be replaced. So it's getting that automation coupled with a lot of what the manufacturers have already got in place, like ERP system, like their stock within the transport sector. And the idea is that you become proactive rather than reactive. So you're always on the forefront of everything else. That's obviously have a knock-on effect, a positive knock-on effect on safety, if we're addressing a safety concern there, or a continuity of service. So manufacturers play a very, very key part in delivering those services for the continuity, and using emerging technology like AI, like blockchain, like automation, and analytics, with a predictive and intelligence element to that, can play a big part in that story, in that transport story.
So there's clearly a need to have these smart environments, hyper-connected environments.
Yeah.
But I can imagine more the CFO, maybe a few CEOs, they're watching this thinking, well, hang on, we've had to reinvest in our properties, we've had to invest in the journey, and now we've probably got to pile in more money, we don't have endless budgets. It's got to be difficult for them balancing up the cost of innovation and potential upside against their current P&Ls. That can't be an easy job for them. What would you say to any of the boardrooms listening to this thinking, we need some help here?
Yeah, really good question actually, and I do sympathize. I mean, if I was sitting on the other side, I'll be thinking the same way. And to be honest, I think it doesn't have to be, we talk about this concept about doing things in small chunks. And the technology now allows us to kind of create a hybrid service between old and new, or legacy and emerging technology, with a middleware in the middle that actually does that interface. So as the technology moved on, we're not as concerned as we were before, so we can start to adopt all of that. But the key thing for me is really the value that you get out of that. So the value that you get out of emerging technology, like for example in an intelligent operation, even in a factory or in manufacturing, it actually pays off. Even though if it's on a small scale. And I keep talking about that. It's actually an evolution rather than a revolution. it takes time to get through to where we really want to get to. And again, it's about starting, not just keep talking about it. It's about the execution in small chunks. And as I said, you don't have to change the whole thing, but you can start to improve it by introducing some really clever tech for your existing operation.
So I suppose if you've got the business case, and then you'll see in some wins coming in off of those business cases,
Absolutely.
you get the confidence to then scale your investments.
Yep, absolutely.
But we said we were going to get you a load of insight today, didn't we? And we said we'd be looking at the very challenges by industry. There's clearly a lot happening in transport right now. If you've got any questions that you would like to pick up with Rabih on, you can use our hashtag Fujitsu Forum TV. We'll get you connected. I'm sure there's many of you that would like to quiz him on what's happening with the ecosystems right now. Up next, what time are we at? It's 9:40. In about 18 minutes' time, we're going to be back with you with our next segment. We're going to be talking quite a bit this morning about edge computing. That's been a real rise, hasn't it? These distributed landscapes going from edge to core to cloud. What does that mean? Where do we process the data? How do we store it? Does it mean that the data center's dead? We're going to be asking those very questions. Stick around. There is so much more to come off Fujitsu Forum TV today.